The Little Prince, by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Published 1943. Dedication to Leon Worth. I apologize to children for dedicating this book to a grown-up. I have a serious excuse. This grown-up is the best friend I have in the world. I have another excuse. This grown-up can understand everything, even children's books. I have a third excuse. This grown-up lives in France, where she is hungry and cold. She really needs to be comforted. If all these excuses are not enough, I am willing to dedicate this book to the child that this grown-up once was. All grown-ups were once children, but few of them remember it, so I correct my dedication to Leon Worth. When he was a little boy. Chapter 1. When I was 6 years old, I once saw a magnificent picture in a book about the rainforest called True Stories. It showed a boa constrictor swallowing a wild animal. Here is a copy of the drawing. Please subscribe, like. In the book, it said, boa constrictors swallow their prey whole without chewing. Afterward, they cannot move and they sleep for 6 months while digesting. I thought a lot about the adventures in the jungle, and in my turn, I managed to draw my first picture with a colored pencil. My drawing number 1 looked like this. I showed my masterpiece to the grown-ups and asked them if my drawing scared them. They answered me, "Why would a hat scare anyone?" My drawing did not represent a hat. It represented a boa constrictor digesting an elephant. So I drew the inside of the boa constrictor so that the grown-ups could understand. They always need explanations. My drawing number 2 looked like this. The grown-ups advised me to put aside the drawings of open or closed boa constrictors and to focus instead on geography, history, arithmetic, and grammar. Thus, I abandoned, at the age of 6, a magnificent career in painting. I had been discouraged by the failure of my drawing number 1 and my drawing number 2. Grown-ups never understand anything by themselves, and it is tiring for children to always and forever give them explanations. I therefore had to choose another profession and learn to fly planes. I flew all over the world, and geography, it's true, helped me a lot. I could recognize at first glance China from Arizona. This is very useful if one gets lost at night. Throughout my life, I thus had a lot of contacts with a lot of serious people. I lived a lot with grown-ups. I saw them very closely. It didn't improve my opinion of them much. When I encountered one who seemed a little clear-headed, I would try my drawing number 1 on her, which I always kept. I wanted to know if she was really understanding. But always, she would answer me, "It's a hat." So I didn't talk to her about boa constrictors, or rainforests, or stars. I put myself at her level. I spoke to her about bridge, golf, politics, and ties. And the grown-up was very pleased to know such a reasonable man. Chapter 2. I thus lived alone without anyone to talk to truly. Until a breakdown in the Sahara Desert 6 years ago. Something had broken in my engine. And since I had neither mechanic nor passengers with me, I prepared to try to carry out a difficult repair by myself. It was a matter of life or death for me. I barely had enough water to drink for 8 days. On the first evening I fell asleep on the sand, 1,000 miles from any inhabited land. I was much more isolated than a shipwrecked person on a raft in the middle of the ocean. So you can imagine my surprise at dawn when a funny little voice woke me up. It said, "Please, draw me a sheep." What? Draw me a sheep? I jumped to my feet as if I had been struck by lightning. I rubbed my eyes well. I looked carefully, and I saw a very extraordinary little man who was looking at me seriously. Here is the best portrait that, later on, I managed to make of him. But my drawing, of course, is much less delightful than the model. It's not my fault. I had been discouraged in my career as a painter by the grown-ups at the age of 6, and I had learned nothing to draw, except closed bows and open bows. I looked at this apparition with wide, astonished eyes. Don't forget that I was 1,000 miles from any inhabited region. Now, my little man didn't seem to me lost, or dead from fatigue, or dead from hunger, or dead from thirst, or dead from fear. He didn't have the appearance of a child lost in the desert. 1,000 miles from any inhabited region. When I finally managed to speak, I said to him, "But what are you doing here?" And he repeated to me, very gently, as if it were something very serious, "Please, draw me a sheep." When the mystery is too impressive, one doesn't dare disobey. As absurd as it seemed to me, 1,000 miles from all inhabited places, and in danger of death, I took out of my pocket a piece of paper and a fountain pen, but I then remembered that I had mainly studied geography, history, arithmetic, and grammar, and I told the little man with a little bad humor that I didn't know how to draw. He answered me, "It doesn't matter. Draw me a sheep." Since I had never drawn a sheep, I read it for him, one of the two only drawings I was capable of, that of the closed bow, and I was astonished to hear the little man respond to me, "No, no, I don't want an elephant in a bow. A bow is very dangerous, and an elephant is very cumbersome. At my home, it's very small. I need a sheep. Draw me a sheep." So I drew. He looked at it carefully then. "No, that one is already very sick. Make another one." I drew. My friend smiled gently, with indulgence. "You see well. That's not a sheep, it's a ram. It has horns." So I read my drawing again, but it was rejected, like the previous ones. "That one is too old. I want a sheep that lives a long time." So, lacking patience, as I was eager to start taking apart my engine, I scribbled this drawing. And I said, "This is the box. The sheep you want is inside." But I was quite surprised to see my young judge's face light up. "That's exactly how I wanted it. Do you think this sheep will need a lot of grass?" "Why?" "Because where I live, everything is very small. Surely it will be enough. I've given you a very small sheep." He leaned over the drawing. "Not that small. Look, he's gone to sleep." And that's how I made the acquaintance of the little prince. Here is the best portrait that, later on, I managed to make of him. Chapter 3. It took me a long time to understand where he came from. The little prince, who asked me many questions, never seemed to hear the ones I asked him. It was things he said, quite by chance, that little by little revealed everything to me. For instance, when he first caught sight of my airplane. "I won't draw my airplane. That's too complicated a drawing for me," he asked. "What's that thing?" "It's not a thing. It flies. It's an airplane. It's my airplane." And I was proud to tell him I could fly. Then he exclaimed, "What? You fell from the sky?" "Yes," I answered modestly. "Oh, that's funny." And the little prince broke into a lovely peal of laughter, which annoyed me a lot. I like my misfortunes to be taken seriously. Then he added, "So, you come from the sky too. Which planet are you from?" That was when I had a glimpse of the mystery of his presence, and I questioned him sharply. "So, you come from another planet?" But he didn't reply. He shook his head gently while gazing at my airplane. "It's true that on that one, you couldn't have come from very far." And he sank into a deep reverie that lasted a long time. Then, taking my sheep out of his pocket, he plunged into the contemplation of his treasure. You can imagine how intrigued I was by this half-confession. About the other planets, I tried to find out more. "Where do you come from, little man? Where is your home? Where are you taking my sheep?" After a thoughtful silence, he answered, "What's good about the box you've given me is that at night, it will serve as his house. Of course. And if you're nice, I'll give you a rope to tie him up during the day. And a stake." The little prince seemed shocked by this suggestion. "Tie him up? What a funny idea. But if you don't tie him up, he'll wander off, and he'll get lost." And my friend burst out laughing again. Where do you think he'd go? Anywhere. Straight ahead. Then the little prince remarked gravely, It doesn't matter. It's so small where I live. And with a hint of melancholy perhaps, he added, Straight ahead, one can't go very far. Chapter 4. That's how I learned a very important thing. His home planet was hardly bigger than a house. That didn't really surprise me much. I knew very well that besides the big planets like Earth, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, to which we've given names, there are hundreds of others that are sometimes so small you can hardly see them through a telescope. When an astronomer discovers one, he gives it a number instead of a name. He might call it Asteroid 3251. I have serious reasons to believe that the planet the little prince came from is asteroid 612. This asteroid has been seen only once, through a telescope, in 1909, by a Turkish astronomer. He made a big demonstration of his discovery at an international astronomy congress, but no one believed him because of the way he was dressed. Grown-ups are like that. Fortunately, for the reputation of asteroid 612, a Turkish dictator forced his people, under penalty of death, to dress in European fashion. The astronomer gave his demonstration again in 1920, in a very elegant suit, and this time everyone accepted his findings. If I have told you these details about asteroid 612 and mentioned its number, it is because of the grown-ups. Grown-ups love numbers. When you talk to them about a new friend, they never ask about the essential things. They never say to you, what does his voice sound like? What games does he like best? Does he collect butterflies? Instead, they ask, how old is he? How many brothers does he have? How much does he weigh? How much does his father earn? Only then do they think they know him. If you say to grown-ups, I saw a beautiful house made of pink bricks, with geraniums in the windows and doves on the roof, they can't imagine such a house. You have to say, I saw a house worth 100,000 francs. Then they exclaim, what a pretty house. So if you say to them, the proof that the little prince existed is that he was charming, that he laughed, and that he wanted a sheep. When someone wants a sheep, that's proof they exist. They will shrug their shoulders and treat you like a child. But if you tell them, the planet he came from is asteroid 612, then they will be convinced, and they'll leave you alone with their questions. That's just how they are. You mustn't hold it against them. Children should always show great patience toward grown-ups. But, of course, we who understand life, we don't care about numbers. I would have liked to start this story like a fairy tale. I would have liked to say, once upon a time, there was a little prince who lived on a planet that was scarcely bigger than he was, and who needed a friend. To those who understand life, that would have sounded much truer. For I don't want my book to be read lightly. I feel so much sadness in recounting these memories. It's been 6 years now since my friend went away with his sheep. If I try to describe him here, it's so that I won't forget him. It's sad to forget a friend. Not everyone has had a friend. And I could become like the grown-ups who care only about numbers. That's why I've bought a box of paints and some pencils. It's hard to get back into drawing at my age, when I've never tried anything beyond drawing a closed bow and an open bow at the age of 6. I will try, of course, to make the portraits as close as possible. But I'm not entirely sure I will succeed. One drawing works, and the next one no longer resembles him. I also get a little mixed up about the size. Here the little prince is too big. There, he is too small. I also hesitate about the color of his outfit. So I fumble here and there as best I can. I will surely make some mistakes in important details. But for that, you'll have to forgive me. My friend never gave me any explanations. Perhaps he thought I was like him. But, unfortunately, I don't know how to see sheep through boxes. I may be a bit like the grown-ups. I've had to grow old. Chapter 5. Every day I learned something new about the little prince's planet, his departure and his journey. It came slowly, in the course of his reflections. That's how, on the third day, I learned about the baobab drama. Once again, it was thanks to the sheep, for suddenly the little prince asked me, as if gripped by a serious doubt, "It's true, isn't it, that sheep eat bushes?" "Yes, that's true." "Ah, I'm glad." I didn't understand why it was so important for the sheep to eat bushes. But the little prince added, "So they also eat baobabs?" I pointed out to the little prince that baobabs are not bushes, but trees as tall as churches, and that even if he brought a whole herd of elephants with him, the herd wouldn't be able to eat a single baobab. The idea of a herd of elephants made the little prince laugh. You'd have to pile them on top of each other. But he wisely added, "Before they grow big, baobabs start out small." "That's true. But why do you want your sheep to eat the little baobabs?" He responded, "Come on," as if it were obvious. And I had to use a great deal of intelligence to figure it out by myself. And indeed, on the little prince's planet, as on all planets, there were good plants and bad plants. Therefore, there were good seeds from good plants and bad seeds from bad plants. But the seeds are invisible. They sleep in the secret of the earth, until one of them gets the urge to wake up. Then it stretches and timidly pushes a charming little sprout toward the sun. If it's a sprout of a radish or a rosebush, you can let it grow as it likes. But if it's a bad plant, you must pull it out at once, as soon as you can recognize it. On the little prince's planet, there were terrible seeds. They were the seeds of baobabs. The soil of the planet was infested with them. And if you attend to a baobab too late, you can never get rid of it again. It overwhelms the whole planet. It perforates it with its roots. And if the planet is too small, and the baobabs are too numerous, they split it apart. It's a matter of discipline, the little prince later told me. When you've finished washing and dressing each morning, you must thoroughly clean the planet. You must regularly pull up the baobabs as soon as you can distinguish them from the rose bushes, which they resemble closely when they are very young. It's a very boring job, but very easy. And one day, he advised me to make a beautiful drawing to clearly get this point across to the children of my home. If they travel someday, he said, it might be useful to them. Sometimes there's no harm in putting off a task. But when it comes to baobabs, it's always a catastrophe. I knew a planet inhabited by a lazy man. He had neglected 3 little bushes. And on the little prince's instructions, I drew that planet. I don't much like taking the tone of a moralist, but the danger of baobabs is so little known, and the risks for anyone who might get lost on an asteroid are so considerable that, for once, I break my reserve. I say, children, be careful of the baobabs. It's to warn my friends of a danger that they, like myself, have long skirted without knowing it, that I've worked so hard on this drawing. The lesson I gave was worth the effort. You might ask, why are there no other equally grandiose drawings in this book? Like the drawing of the baobabs? The answer is simple. I tried, but I couldn't succeed. When I drew the baobabs, I was moved by a sense of urgency. Chapter 6. Ah, little prince, I gradually came to understand your melancholy little life. You had long found no other distraction than the sweetness of sunsets. I learned this new detail on the 4th day in the morning when you said to me, I'm very fond of sunsets. Let's go see a sunset. But we have to wait. Wait for what? Wait for the sun to set. You seemed very surprised at first, and then you laughed at yourself. And you said to me, I always think I'm at home. Indeed, when it's noon in the United States, everyone knows the sun is setting in France. If you could go to France in a minute, you could watch the sunset. Unfortunately, France is too far away. But on your tiny planet, all you had to do was move your chair a few steps, and you could watch the twilight whenever you wanted. One day, I saw the sunset 44 times. And a little later you added, you know, When one is very sad, sunsets are lovely. The day you saw it 44 times, were you that sad then? But the little prince did not answer. Chapter 7. On the 5th day, thanks again to the sheep. A secret of the little prince's life was revealed to me, without preamble, as if a question long pondered in silence had finally come to fruition. He asked me abruptly, "A sheep, if it eats shrubs, does it also eat flowers?" "A sheep eats anything it comes across, even flowers with thorns." "Yes, even flowers with thorns." "Then, what are thorns for?" I didn't know. I was at that moment preoccupied with trying to unscrew a bolt that was too tight on my engine. I was very worried because the failure was starting to look serious, and the water I had left to drink was running out, making me fear the worst. "What are thorns for?" The little prince never let go of a question once he had asked it. I was irritated by my stubborn bolt and replied carelessly, "Thorns are of no use, they're just pure spite from flowers." "Oh!" But after a silence, he shot back at me with a sort of resentment. "I don't believe you. Flowers are weak. They are naive. They reassure themselves the best they can. They think they're terrifying with their thorns." I said nothing. At that moment, I was thinking, if this bolt keeps resisting, I'll knock it out with a hammer. The little prince disturbed my thoughts again. "And you think the flowers?" "No, no, I don't think anything. I just said whatever. I'm dealing with serious things." He looked at me in astonishment. "Serious things?" He saw me with a hammer in hand, my fingers black with grease, bent over an object that seemed very ugly to him. "You talk like grown-ups." That made me feel a little ashamed. But he was merciless. He added, "You mix everything up, you confuse everything." He was really very upset. He shook his head in the wind, his golden hair shimmering. "I know a planet where there's a crimson-faced gentleman. He's never smelled a flower. He's never looked at a star. He's never loved anyone. He's never done anything but sums. And all day long he repeats like you, 'I'm a serious man, I'm a serious man.' And it makes him swell with pride. But he's not a man, he's a mushroom." "A what?" "A mushroom." The little prince was now pale with anger. Such power amazed the little prince. If he had held such power himself, he could have witnessed not just 44, but 72 or even 200 sunsets in a single day, just by moving his chair. And as he was feeling a little sad, thinking of his abandoned planet, he dared to ask a favor of the king. "I would like to see a sunset. Please order the sun to set." If I ordered a general to fly from one flower to another, like a butterfly, or to write a tragedy, or to turn into a seabird, and if the general did not carry out the order, who would be at fault, him or me? "It would be you," said the little prince firmly. "Exactly. One must demand from each what each can give," the king continued. "Authority rests first and foremost on reason. If you order your people to throw themselves into the sea, they will revolt. I have the right to demand obedience because my orders are reasonable." "Then my sunset?" the little prince reminded him, for he never forgot a question once it was asked. "You shall have your sunset. I shall command it. But according to my science of government, I shall wait until the conditions are favorable." "When will that be?" inquired the little prince. Hem," replied the king, consulting a large calendar. Him, that will be tonight at about 7:40, and you shall see how well I am obeyed." The little prince yawned. He regretted his missed sunset. And then he was already feeling a little bored. "I have nothing more to do here," he said to the king. "I am going to leave." "Do not leave," replied the king, who was so proud of having a subject. "Do not leave. I make you minister." "Minister of what?" Of justice. But there is no one to judge." "We do not know that," said the king. "I have not yet made the tour of my kingdom. I am very old, and it tires me to walk." "Oh, but I have already seen," said the little prince, leaning over to take another glance at the other side of the planet. There's no one over there either. Then you shall judge yourself, replied the king. That is the hardest thing to do. It is much more difficult to judge oneself than to judge others. If you manage to judge yourself well, then you are truly a wise man. Me, said the little prince, I can judge myself anywhere. I don't need to stay here. Hem, said the king. I believe there is somewhere on my planet an old rat. I hear him at night. You could judge this old rat. You could condemn him to death from time to time. Thus his life will depend on your justice. But you will pardon him each time to save him. There is only one. I don't like condemning to death, said the little prince, and I think I'm going to leave. No, said the king. But the little prince, having completed his preparations, did not want to upset the old monarch. If your majesty desires to be obeyed promptly, she could give me a reasonable order. She could, for example, order me to leave before a minute has passed. It seems to me that the conditions are favorable. The king did not respond, so the little prince hesitated a moment. Then, with a sigh, he set off. I make you my ambassador, the king hurriedly shouted after him. He had a great air of authority. The grown-ups are very strange, thought the little prince as he continued on his journey. For millions of years, flowers have been producing thorns. For millions of years, sheep have been eating flowers despite the thorns. And it's not serious trying to understand why flowers go to all this trouble. To produce thorns that are useless? It's not important, the war between the sheep and the flowers. It's not more serious and more important than the sums of a fat red-faced man. And if I know myself a unique flower in the whole universe that exists nowhere but on my planet, and a little sheep can destroy it in one bite, just like that, one morning, without realizing what it's doing, isn't that important? He blushed, then continued. If someone loves a flower, of which just one exists among millions, and millions of stars, that's enough to make him happy when he looks at the stars. He tells himself, my flower is up there somewhere. But if the sheep eats the flower, it's as if, all at once, all the stars went out, and that's not important. He could say no more. He burst into sobs. Night had fallen. I had dropped my tools. I didn't care anymore about my hammer, my bolt, my thirst, or my death. There was a little prince to console. I took him in my arms. I cradled him. I said to him, the flower you love is not in danger. I'll draw a muzzle for your sheep. I'll draw you a shield for your flower. I didn't know what else to say. I felt awkward. I didn't know how to reach him. Where to find him? The land of tears is so mysterious. Chapter 8. I soon learned to know this flower better. On the little prince's planet, there had always been very simple flowers adorned with a single row of petals that took up no space and disturbed no one. They would appear in the grass one morning and then fade away by evening. But this one had grown one day from a seed brought from who knows where, and the little prince had closely watched over this sprout. That didn't resemble any of the others. It might have been a new kind of baobab. But the shrub soon stopped growing and began to prepare a flower. The little prince, who was present for the appearance of a huge bud, felt that something miraculous would emerge. But the flower's preparations to be beautiful took so long, hidden within her green chamber. She chose her colors with care. She dressed slowly, adjusting her petals one by one. She didn't want to emerge all crumpled like the poppies. She wanted to appear only in the full radiance of her beauty. Oh yes, she was very vain. Her mysterious preparations lasted for days and days. And then, one morning, precisely at sunrise, she finally revealed herself. And she, who had worked with such precision, said while yawning, "Oh, I'm only just waking up. I beg your pardon, I'm still all disheveled." The little prince couldn't contain his admiration. "How beautiful you are, aren't I?" she replied sweetly. "And I was born at the same time as the sun." The little prince sensed that she wasn't too modest, but she was so moving. "I think it's time for breakfast," she added soon after. Would you be kind enough to think of me?" And the little prince, still confused, went to fetch a watering can of fresh water and serve the flower. Thus, she quickly began tormenting him with her somewhat touchy vanity. One day, for instance, speaking of her four thorns, she said to the little prince, "Let them come, the tigers, with their claws." "There are no tigers on my planet." The little prince objected, "and besides, tigers don't eat grass." "I am not grass," replied the flower gently. "Excuse me. I don't fear tigers, but I have a horror of drafts. Would you happen to have a screen?" "Horror of drafts, that's not very fortunate for a plant," noted the little prince. "This flower is rather complicated. In the evening, you will place me under a glass dome. It's very cold here where you live. It's badly arranged, where I come from." But she interrupted herself. She had come in the form of a seed. She could know nothing of other worlds. Embarrassed at having been caught in such a knave lie, she cut 2 or 3 times to make the little prince feel guilty. "The screen? I was going to get it, but you were talking to me." She forced her cough to make him feel remorse just the same. Thus, the little prince, despite all the goodwill of his love, had soon come to doubt her. He had taken seriously words that were of no consequence, and had become very unhappy. "I should never have listened to her," he confided to me one day. "One must never listen to flowers. One must look at them and breathe them. Mine perfumed my planet, but I didn't know how to enjoy it. That story about claws, which had so irritated me, should have moved me." He confided again, "I didn't know how to understand her. Then I should have judged her by her actions, not by her words. She perfumed and brightened my life. I should never have run away. I should have recognized her tenderness behind her little ruses. Flowers are so contradictory, but I was too young to know how to love her." Chapter 9. I believe he took advantage of a migration of wild birds for his escape. On the morning of his departure, he put his planet in perfect order. He carefully cleaned out his active volcanoes. He owned 2 active volcanoes, and they were very convenient for heating his breakfast. He also had 1 extinct volcano, but as he said, "You never know." So he cleaned the extinct volcano as well. If they are properly cleaned, volcanoes burn gently and steadily without eruptions. Volcanic eruptions are like fires in a chimney. Obviously, we are too small on Earth to clean our volcanoes, which is why they cause us so many troubles. The little prince also pulled up, with a bit of melancholy. The last baobab sprouts. He believed he would never return. But all these familiar tasks seemed so pleasant to him that morning. And when he watered the flower one last time and prepared to cover it under its glass globe, he found himself wanting to cry. "Goodbye," he said to the flower. But she did not respond. "Goodbye," he repeated. The flower coughed, but it was not because of her cold. "I was silly," she finally said to him. "I ask your forgiveness. Try to be happy." He was surprised by the absence of reproaches. He stood there, quite bewildered, holding the glass globe in midair. He did not understand this calm gentleness. "Yes, I love you," the flower said. "You never knew because of me. It doesn't matter. But you were just as foolish as I was. Try to be happy. Leave this glass alone. I don't want it any more. But the wind. I'm not that cold. The cool night air will do me good. I am a flower. But the animals. I have to endure 2 or 3 caterpillars if I want to meet the butterflies. It seems they are so beautiful. Otherwise, who will visit me? You will be far away. As for the big animals, I'm not afraid of them. I have my claws." And she naively showed her 4 thorns. Then she added, "Don't dawdle like this. It's irritating. You have decided to leave. Now go." For she did not want him to see her cry. She was such a proud flower. Chapter 10. he found himself in the region of asteroids 325, 326, 327, 328, 329, and 330. So he began by visiting them, seeking an occupation, and to learn something. The first one was inhabited by a king. The king sat, dressed in royal purple and ermine, on a very simple yet majestic throne. "Ah, here is a subject," the king exclaimed when he saw the little prince. The little prince wondered, "How can he know me, when he has never seen me before?" He did not realize that for kings, the world is greatly simplified. All men are subjects. "Come closer so I can see you better," the king said, who was very proud to finally be king over someone. The little prince looked around for a place to sit down, but the planet was entirely covered by the king's magnificent ermine robe. So he remained standing, and as he was tired he yawned. "It is against etiquette to yawn in the presence of a king," the monarch said. "I forbid it." "I can't help it," replied the little prince, confused. "I have traveled a long way and haven't slept." "Then," the king said, "I order you to yawn." "I haven't seen anyone yawn for years. Yawning is a rarity for me." "Come on, yawn again." "It's an order." "That intimidates me." "I can't do it any more," said the little prince, blushing deeply. "Hem, hem," replied the king. "Well, I order you to yawn at times and at other times." He mumbled a little, appearing somewhat offended, for the king cared greatly about his authority being respected. He tolerated no disobedience. He was an absolute monarch. But as he was very reasonable, his orders were always fair. "If I were to order," he often said, "if I ordered a general to transform himself into a seabird, and if the general did not obey, it would not be the general's fault. It would be mine." "May I sit down?" inquired the little prince timidly. "I order you to sit," the king answered, drawing majestically one corner of his ermine robe. But the little prince was wondering. The planet was tiny. Over what could the king really reign? "Sire," he said, "I beg your pardon for asking." "I order you to ask me," the king hastened to say. "Sire, over what do you reign?" "Over everything," said the king, with great simplicity. "Over everything?" The king made a discreet gesture, pointing to his planet, the other planets, and the stars. "Over all that?" asked the little prince. "Over all that," replied the king. For not only was he an absolute monarch, but he was also a universal monarch. "And do the stars obey you?" "Certainly," the king said. "They obey instantly. I tolerate no indiscipline." Chapter 11. The second planet was inhabited by a vain man. "Ah, here comes the visit of an admirer," the vain man exclaimed from afar, as soon as he spotted the little prince. For vain men, other people are only admirers. "Hello," said the little prince. "You have a funny hat." "It's for saluting," replied the vain man. "It's for saluting when people acclaim me. Unfortunately, no one ever passes by here." "Ah, really?" said the little prince, who didn't understand. "Clap your hands together," suggested the vain man. The little prince clapped his hands together, and the vain man saluted modestly by lifting his hat. "This is more amusing than the king's visit," the little prince thought to himself, and he started clapping again. The vain man saluted once more by raising his hat. After 5 minutes of this exercise, the little prince grew tired of the monotony of the game, and to make the hat fall, "What should I do?" he asked. But the vain man did not hear. Vain men never hear anything but praise. "Do you really admire me a lot?" he asked the little prince. "What does admire mean?" "Admire means recognizing that I am the most beautiful, the best dressed, the richest, and the most intelligent man on the planet. But you're alone on your planet. Please, admire me anyway." "I admire you," said the little prince, shrugging a bit. "But what good does it do you?" And the little prince went on his way. "Adults are decidedly quite odd," he said to himself as he continued his journey. Chapter 12. The next planet was inhabited by a drunkard. This visit was very short, but it plunged the little prince into deep sadness. "What are you doing there?" he asked the drunkard, whom he found sitting in silence before a collection of empty bottles and a collection of full ones. "I'm drinking," replied the drunkard with a gloomy expression. "Why are you drinking?" asked the little prince. "To forget," answered the drunkard. "To forget what?" inquired the little prince, already feeling sorry for him. "To forget that I'm ashamed," confessed the drunkard, lowering his head. "Ashamed of what?" pressed the little prince, who wanted to help him. "Ashamed of drinking," finished the drunkard, who shut himself into silence forever. And the little prince went on his way, perplexed. "Adults are certainly very, very strange," he said to himself as he continued his journey. Chapter 13. The fourth planet belonged to a businessman. This man was so busy that he didn't even lift his head when the little prince arrived. "Good morning," said the little prince. "Your cigarette has gone out. 3 and 2 make 5. 5 and 7 make 12. 12 and 3 make 15. Good morning. 15 and 7 make 22. 22 and 6 make 28. I don't have time to relight it. 26 and 5 make 31. Phew, that makes 501,622,731. 500 million what?" asked the little prince. "Huh? Are you still here? 501 million of? I don't remember. I have so much work. I'm serious. I don't have time for nonsense. 2 and 5 make 7. 500 million what?" repeated the little prince, who never let go of a question once he'd asked it. The businessman raised his head. "For the 54 years I've inhabited this planet, I've only been disturbed 3 times. The first time was 22 years ago when a beetle fell from nowhere. It made a terrible noise, and I made 4 mistakes in a sum. The second time was 11 years ago when I had a rheumatism attack. I lack exercise. I don't have time to stroll around. I'm serious, I am. The third time, well, it's now. So I said, 501 million. Million what?" The businessman realized there was no hope of peace. Million of those little things one sometimes sees in the sky. Flies? No, little shiny things. Bees? No, little golden things that make lazy people daydream. But I'm serious. I don't have time for daydreaming. "Ah, stars? That's it, stars. And what do you do with 500 million stars? 501,622,731. I'm a serious man. I'm precise. And what do you do with these stars? What do I do with them? Yes, nothing. I own them. You own the stars. Yes, but I've already seen a king who... Kings don't own. They reign over. It's very different. And what's the use of owning stars? It makes me rich. And what's the use of being rich? To buy more stars, if anyone finds them." "This man," the little prince said to himself, "reasons a little like my drunkard." Nevertheless, he asked more questions. "How can someone own the stars? To whom do they belong?" retorted the businessman grumpily. "I don't know. To nobody." "Then they're mine because I thought of it first. And that's all it takes. Of course. When you find a diamond that belongs to nobody, it's yours. When you discover an island that belongs to nobody, it's yours. When you have an idea before anyone else, you patent it, it's yours. And I own the stars because no one before me ever thought of owning them." "That's true enough," said the little prince. "And what do you do with them?" "I manage them. I count them and recount them," said the businessman. "It's difficult. But I'm a serious man." The little prince wasn't satisfied yet. "Me, if I own a scarf, I can tie it around my neck and take it with me. If I own a flower, I can pick it and take it with me. But you can't pick the stars." "No, but I can put them in the bank." "What does that mean?" "It means that I write down on a piece of paper how many stars I own. Then I lock that piece of paper in a drawer. And that's all. That's enough. That's funny, thought the little prince. It's quite poetic, but it's not very serious. The little prince had very different ideas about what was serious from the ideas of adults. I, he said, own a flower that I water every day. I own 3 volcanoes, which I clean out every week. I even clean out the one that's extinct. You never know. It's useful to my volcanoes, and it's useful to my flower that I own them. But you're not useful to the stars. The businessman opened his mouth but found nothing to say, and the little prince went on his way. Adults are certainly quite extraordinary, he said to himself as he continued his journey. Chapter 14. The 5th planet was very strange. It was the smallest of all. There was just enough room for a street lamp and a lamplighter. The little prince could not understand what purpose a street lamp and a lamplighter could serve somewhere in the sky on a planet with no houses or inhabitants. However, he said to himself, maybe this man is absurd. But he is less absurd than the king, the vain man, the businessman, and the drunkard. At least his work has some meaning. When he lights his lamp, it's as if he creates one more star or one more flower. When he extinguishes his lamp, it puts the flower or the star to sleep. It's a beautiful occupation. It's truly useful because it's beautiful. When he arrived on the planet, he respectfully greeted the lamplighter. "Hello. Why did you just put out your lamp?" "It's the order," replied the lamplighter. "Good morning." "What is the order?" "It's to put out my lamp." "Good evening." And he lit it again. "But why did you just relight it?" "It's the order," replied the lamplighter. "I don't understand," said the little prince. "There's nothing to understand," said the lamplighter. "The order is the order." "Good morning." And he put out his lamp again. Then he wiped his forehead with a checkered red handkerchief. "I do a terrible job. It used to make sense. I would put out the lamp in the morning and light it in the evening. I had the rest of the day to rest, and the rest of the night to sleep. And since then, the order has changed." "The order hasn't changed," said the lamplighter. "That's the tragedy. The planet is spinning faster and faster each year. But the order hasn't changed." "So?" asked the little prince. "So now that it makes a full turn every minute. I no longer have a second of rest. I light and extinguish the lamp once every minute." "That's funny. Your days last only a minute." "It's not funny at all," said the lamplighter. "We've already been talking for a month." "A month?" "Yes, 30 minutes. 30 days. Good evening." And he lit his lamp again. The little prince watched him, and he liked this lamplighter, who was so faithful to the order. He remembered the sunsets he used to chase, moving his chair. He wanted to help his friend. "You know I know a way for you to rest whenever you want." "I always want to rest," said the lamplighter. "For one can be faithful and lazy at the same time." The little prince continued. "Your planet is so small that you can walk around it in 3 strides. You only have to walk slowly enough to stay in the sun. When you want to rest, you walk and the day will last as long as you want." "That doesn't help me much," said the lamplighter. "What I love in life is sleeping." "That's not lucky," said the little prince. "It's not lucky," said the lamplighter. "Good morning." And he put out his lamp. That one, thought the little prince as he continued his journey, that one would be despised by all the others. By the king, by the vain man, by the drunkard, by the businessman. Yet he's the only one who doesn't seem ridiculous to me. Perhaps because he's concerned with something other than himself. He sighed with regret and said to himself once again, "That one is the only one I could have made my friend. But his planet is really too small. There's no room for 2. What the little prince didn't dare admit to himself was that he missed this blessed planet, mostly because of the 1440 sunsets every 24 hours. Chapter 15. The 6th planet was 10 times larger. It was inhabited by an old gentleman who wrote enormous books. "Look, an explorer," he exclaimed when he saw the little prince. The little prince sat down on the table and caught his breath. He had already traveled so much. "Where do you come from?" the old gentleman asked him. "What is this big book?" said the little prince. "What do you do here?" "I am a geographer," said the old gentleman. "What is a geographer?" "A scholar who knows where the seas, rivers, cities, mountains, and deserts are." "That's really interesting," said the little prince. "Finally, a real profession." And he gazed around at the geographer's planet. He had never seen a planet so majestic. "It's very beautiful, your planet." "Are there oceans?" "I can't say," said the geographer. "Ah!" The little prince was disappointed. "And mountains?" "I can't say," said the geographer. "And cities and rivers and deserts?" "I can't say that either," said the geographer. "But you are a geographer." "Exactly," said the geographer. "But I'm not an explorer. I lack explorers. It's not the geographer who counts cities, rivers, mountains, seas, oceans, and deserts. The geographer is too important to wander around. He doesn't leave his office, but he receives the explorers there. He questions them and writes down their memories. And if the memories of one of them seem interesting to him, the geographer investigates the explorer's moral character. Why is that? Because an explorer who lies would cause disasters in geography books. And also an explorer who drinks too much. "Why is that?" asked the little prince. "Because drunkards see double." Then the geographer would note 2 mountains where there's only one. "I know someone," said the little prince, "who would make a bad explorer." "That's possible." So when the explorer's moral character seems good, we investigate their discovery. We go see it. No, it's too complicated. But we demand that the explorer provide proof. If it's, for example, the discovery of a large mountain, we require them to bring back large stones. The geographer suddenly became excited. "But you come from far away. You are an explorer. You will describe your planet to me." And the geographer, having opened his register, sharpened his pencil. The stories of explorers are noted in pencil first. They wait to be recorded in ink until the explorer provides proof. "So?" asked the geographer. "Oh, at my place," said the little prince. "It's not very interesting. It's very small. I have 3 volcanoes."
2 active volcanoes and 1 extinct.
"But you never know." "You never know," said the geographer. "I also have a flower." "We don't record flowers," said the geographer. "Why not? That's the prettiest thing." "Because flowers are ephemeral." "What does ephemeral mean?" "Geographies," said the geographer, "are the most serious of all books. They never go out of style. It's very rare for a mountain to change its place. It's very rare for an ocean to dry up. We write eternal things." "But extinct volcanoes can wake up," interrupted the little prince. "What does ephemeral mean?" "Whether volcanoes are extinct or active." "It's the same for us," said the geographer. "What matters to us is the mountain. It doesn't change." "But what does ephemeral mean?" repeated the little prince, who had never in his life given up on a question once he had asked it. "It means which is threatened with imminent disappearance." "My flower is threatened with imminent disappearance." "Of course. My flower is ephemeral," thought the little prince, "and she has only 4 thorns to defend herself against the world, and I have left her all alone at home." This was his first feeling of regret, but he took heart again. "What do you advise me to visit?" he asked. "The planet Earth," replied the geographer. "It has a good reputation." And the little prince departed, thinking of his flower. Chapter 16. The 7th planet was therefore Earth. Earth is not just any planet. It is home to 111 kings, not forgetting, of course, the Black Kings, 7,000 geographers, 900,000 businessmen, 7.5 million drunkards, 311 million vain people, which means about 2 billion grown-ups. To give you an idea of the size of Earth, I will tell you that before the invention of electricity, It was necessary to maintain a veritable army of 462,511 lamplighters across all 6 continents. From a distance, it had a splendid effect. The movements of this army were regulated like those of an opera ballet. First, it was the turn of the lamplighters from New Zealand and Australia. Then, having lit their lamps, they went to sleep. Then, in turn, came the lamplighters from China and Siberia. Then they too vanished behind the scenes. Next were the lamplighters from Russia and India, followed by those from Africa and Europe, then from South America, and finally from North America. They never made a mistake in their order of entry on stage. It was magnificent. Only the lamplighter of the single lamp at the North Pole, and his counterpart at the single lamp at the South Pole, lived lives of idleness and leisure. They worked twice a year. Chapter 17. When one wants to be clever, it sometimes happens that one lies a little. I have not been very honest in speaking to you about the lamplighters. I risk giving a false idea of our planet to those who do not know it. Men occupy very little space on Earth. If the 2 billion inhabitants who populate the Earth stood up and squeezed together, like for a meeting, they would easily fit in a public square 20,000 feet long by 20,000 feet wide. Humanity could be packed onto the smallest little island in the Pacific. Of course, grown-ups will not believe you. They imagine they take up a lot of space. They see themselves as important as baobabs. So you will advise them to do the math. They love numbers that will please them. But do not waste your time on this tedious task. It's useless. You can trust me. You can trust me. Once on Earth, the little prince was quite surprised not to see anyone. He was already afraid he had landed on the wrong planet, when a moon-colored ring stirred in the sand. "Good night," said the little prince just in case. "Good night," replied the snake. "On which planet have I landed?" asked the little prince. "On Earth, in Africa," replied the snake. "Ah, so there is no one on Earth? This is the desert. There is no one in the deserts." "Earth is large," said the snake. The little prince sat on a stone and looked up at the sky. "I wonder," he said, "if the stars are lit up, so that everyone can one day find their own. Look at my planet. It is right above us, but how far away it is." "It is beautiful," said the snake. "What are you doing here?" "I have difficulties with a flower," said the little prince. "Ah," said the snake. And they fell silent. "Where are the men?" finally asked the little prince. "It's a bit lonely in the desert." "We are alone among men too," said the snake. The little prince looked at him for a long time. "You are a strange beast," he said at last, thin as a finger. "But I am more powerful than the finger of a king," said the snake. The little prince smiled. "You are not very powerful. You don't even have legs. You can't even travel." "I can take you further than a ship," said the snake. He wrapped himself around the little prince's ankle like a gold bracelet. "Whoever I touch, I return to the earth from which they came," he said again. "But you are pure, and you come from a star." The little prince said nothing. "You make me pity you, you so weak on this granite earth. I can help you one day if you regret your planet." "I can." "Oh, I understand very well," said the little prince. "But why do you always speak in riddles?" "I solve them all," said the snake. And they fell silent. Chapter 18. The little prince crossed the desert and met only one flower. A flower with 3 petals, a flower of nothing at all. "Hello," said the little prince. "Hello," said the flower. "Where are the men?" asked the little prince politely. The flower had seen a caravan pass by one day. "Men? I believe there are 6 or 7 of them. I saw them years ago. But one never knows where to find them. The wind carries them away. They lack roots that bothers them a lot." "Goodbye," said the little prince. "Goodbye," said the flower. Chapter 19. The little prince climbed a high mountain. The only mountains he had ever known were the 3 volcanoes that came up to his knees. He used the extinct volcano as a stool. from a mountain as high as this one, he said to himself, "I will see the whole planet and all the people," but he saw nothing but sharp rock needles. "Hello," he said by chance. "Hello, hello, hello," echoed the reply. "Who are you?" asked the little prince. "Who are you, who are you, who are you?" echoed the reply. "Be my friends." "I am alone," he said. "I am alone, I am alone, I am alone," echoed the reply. "What a strange planet," he thought. "It is all dry and sharp and salty. And men lack imagination. They repeat what you tell them back home. I had a flower, she always spoke first." Chapter 20. But it happened that the little prince, having walked for a long time through sands, rocks, and snow, finally discovered a road. And all roads lead to people. "Hello," he said. It was a garden full of roses. "Hello," said the roses. The little prince looked at them. They all resembled his flower. "Who are you?" he asked, astonished. "We are roses," said the roses. "Ah," said the little prince. And he felt very unhappy. His flower had told him that she was the only one of her kind in the universe. And here there were 5,000 of them, all alike, in a single garden. She would be very upset, he thought, if she saw this. She would cough a lot and pretend to die to escape the ridicule. And I would be forced to pretend to care for her, otherwise to humiliate me. Too, she would really let herself die. Then he thought again, I thought I was rich with a unique flower. And I only have an ordinary rose. That and my 3 volcanoes that come up to my knees, one of which, perhaps, is extinguished forever, does not make me a very great prince, and lying in the grass, he cried. Chapter 21. At that moment, the fox appeared. "Hello," said the fox. "Hello," replied the little prince politely, turning around but seeing nothing. "I am here," said the voice, "under the apple tree." "Who are you?" said the little prince. "You are very pretty." "I am a fox," said the fox. "Come play with me," proposed the little prince. "I am so sad." "I cannot play with you," said the fox. "I am not tamed." "Oh, I'm sorry," said the little prince. But after thinking, he added, "What does tame mean?" "You are not from here," said the fox. "What are you looking for?" "I am looking for men," said the little prince. "What does tame mean?" "Men," said the fox, "they have guns and they hunt." "That is very annoying. They raise chickens too." "That is their only interest." "Are you looking for chickens?" "No," said the little prince. "I am looking for friends." "What does tame mean?" "It is a thing too forgotten," said the fox. "It means to create ties." "Create ties?" "Of course," said the fox. "You are still for me. Just a little boy exactly like 100,000 little boys. And I don't need you. And you don't need me either. I am for you just a fox like 100,000 foxes. But if you tame me, we will need each other. You will be unique in the world for me. I will be unique in the world for you." "I begin to understand," said the little prince. "There is a flower, I think she has tamed me." "It is possible," said the fox. "One sees all sorts of things on earth." "Oh, it is not on earth," said the little prince. The fox seemed very intrigued. "On another planet?" "Yes. Are there hunters on that planet?" "No." "That is interesting. And chickens?" "No." "Nothing is perfect," sighed the fox. But the fox returned to his idea. "My life is monotonous. I hunt chickens, men hunt me. All chickens look alike, and all men look alike. So I am a bit bored. But if you tame me, my life will be brightened. I will know a sound of footsteps that will be different from all the others. The other footsteps make me go underground. Yours will call me out of my burrow, like music. And look, you see those fields of wheat? I do not eat bread. Wheat is useless for me. The wheat fields remind me of nothing. And that is sad, but you have hair the color of gold. So it will be wonderful when you tame me. The wheat, which is golden, will remind me of you. And I will love the sound of the wind in the wheat. The fox fell silent and looked at the little prince for a long time. "Please tame me," said the fox. "I want to," replied the little prince, "but I don't have much time. I have friends to discover and many things to learn." "One only knows the things one tames," said the fox. "Men no longer have time to know anything. They buy things ready-made from merchants. But as there are no merchants of friends, men no longer have friends. If you want a friend, tame me." "What must I do?" asked the little prince. "You must be very patient," replied the fox. "You will sit a little way away from me, like that, in the grass. I will look at you out of the corner of my eye, and you will say nothing." Language is a source of misunderstandings. But each day, you can sit a little closer. The next day, the little prince returned. "It would have been better to come at the same hour," said the fox. "If you come, for example, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon from 3 o'clock, I will begin to be happy. The closer it gets to the hour, the happier I will feel. At 4 o'clock, I will already be agitated and worried. I will discover the price of happiness. But if you come at any old time, I will never know at what hour to prepare my heart. There must be rituals." "What is a ritual?" asked the little prince. "It is also something too forgotten," said the fox. "It is what makes one day different from other days, one hour different from other hours. There is a ritual, for example, with my hunters. They dance on Thursdays with the village girls. So Thursday is a wonderful day. I go for a walk to the vineyard. If the hunters danced at any time, the days would all be alike, and I would have no vacation." Thus, the little prince tamed the fox. And when the time for departure was near, "Ah," said the fox, "I will cry." "It is your fault," said the little prince. "I did not wish you any harm, but you wanted me to tame you." "Of course," said the fox. "But you will cry," said the little prince. "Of course," said the fox. "Then you gain nothing." "I gain," said the fox, "because of the color of the wheat." Then he added, "Go back to see the roses. You will understand that yours is unique in the world. You will come back to say goodbye, and I will gift you a secret." The little prince went back to see the roses. "You are not at all like my rose. You are nothing yet," he told them. "No one has tamed you, and you have tamed no one. You are like my fox was. He was just a fox like 100,000 others. But I made him my friend, and now he is unique in the world." And the roses felt embarrassed. "You are beautiful, but you are empty," he told them again. "One cannot die for you. Of course, my rose, an ordinary passerby would think she looks like you. But she alone is more important than all of you, since it is she whom I have watered, since it is she whom I have placed under the glass dome, since it is she whom I have sheltered with the screen, since it is she whose caterpillars I have killed, except for the 2 or 3 for the butterflies, since it is she whom I have listened to complain or boast, or even sometimes be silent, since it is my rose." And he returned to the fox. "Goodbye," he said. "Goodbye," said the fox. "Here is my secret. It is very simple. One sees clearly only with the heart. What is essential is invisible to the eyes. What is essential is invisible to the eyes," repeated the little prince, in order to remember. "It is the time you have wasted for your rose that makes your rose so important. It is the time I have wasted for my rose," said the little prince, in order to remember. "Men have forgotten this truth," said the fox. "But you must not forget it. You become responsible forever for what you have tamed. You are responsible for your rose. I am responsible for my rose," repeated the little prince, in order to remember. Chapter 22. "Hello," said the little prince. "Hello," said the switchman. "What are you doing here?" asked the little prince. "I sort the travelers into groups of 1,000, said the switchman. "I dispatch the trains that take them away, sometimes to the right, sometimes to the left, and a fast train, illuminated and rumbling, like thunder, made the switchman's cabin shake. "They are in such a hurry," said the little prince. "What are they looking for?" "The man on the locomotive doesn't even know that," said the switchman. and a second illuminated fast train rumbled in the opposite direction. "Are they already coming back?" asked the little prince. "They are not the same ones," said the switchman. "It's an exchange." "Weren't they happy where they were?" "One is never happy where one is," said the switchman. And the thunder of a third illuminated fast train rumbled. "Are they chasing after the first travelers?" asked the little prince. "They are not chasing anything at all," said the switchman. "They are sleeping in there, or they are yawning. Only the children press their noses against the windows. Only children know what they are looking for," said the little prince. "They waste time for a rag doll. And it becomes very important, and if someone takes it away, they cry. They are lucky," said the switchman. Chapter 23. "Hello," said the little prince. "Hello," said the merchant. He was a merchant of special pills that soothe thirst. One takes one pill a week and no longer feels the need to drink. "Why are you selling that?" asked the little prince. "It's a big time saver," said the merchant. "Experts have done calculations. You save 53 minutes a week. And what do you do with those 53 minutes? You do what you want with them." "Me," thought the little prince, "if I had 53 minutes to spend, I would walk very slowly to a fountain." Chapter 24. We were on the 8th day of my breakdown in the desert, and I had listened to the merchant's story while drinking the last drop of my water supply. "Ah," I said to the little prince, "your memories are very pretty. But I haven't repaired my airplane yet. I have nothing left to drink. And I would be happy too if I could walk very slowly to a fountain." "My friend the fox," he said to me. "My little man, it's no longer about the fox." "Why not?" "Because we are going to die of thirst." He didn't understand my reasoning. He replied, "It is good to have had a friend, even if one is going to die. I am very happy to have had a fox friend. He does not measure the danger," I told myself. "He has never been hungry or thirsty. A little sunshine is enough for him." But he looked at me and answered my thoughts. "I am thirsty too, let's look for a well." I made a gesture of weariness. It is absurd to look for a well at random in the vastness of the desert. Yet we set off. When we had walked for hours in silence, night fell, and the stars began to twinkle. I saw them as in a dream, having a slight fever from my thirst. The little prince's words danced in my memory. "So you're thirsty too?" I asked him. But he didn't answer my question. He simply said, "Water can also be good for the heart." I didn't understand his reply, but I kept quiet. I knew that I shouldn't question him. He was tired. He sat down. I sat down beside him. And after a silence, he said again, "The stars are beautiful because of a flower that we cannot see." I replied, "Of course," and I looked silently at the folds of the sand under the moon. "The desert is beautiful," he added. And it was true. I have always loved the desert. One sits on a sand dune. You see nothing. You hear nothing. And yet something shines in silence. "What beautifies the desert," said the little prince, "is that it hides a well somewhere." I was surprised to suddenly understand this mysterious radiance of the sand. When I was a little boy, I lived in an old house, and the legend said that a treasure was buried there. Of course, no one ever discovered it, nor perhaps even sought it. But it enchanted the whole house. My house hid a secret deep in its heart. "Yes," I said to the little prince, "whether it is the house, the stars, or the desert, what makes their beauty is invisible." "I'm glad," he said, "that you agree with my fox." As the little prince fell asleep, I took him in my arms and continued on my way. I was moved. It seemed to me that I was carrying a fragile treasure. It even seemed to me that there was nothing more fragile on earth. I looked in the moonlight at his pale forehead, his closed eyes, the strands of hair that trembled in the wind, and I said to myself, "What I see there is only a shell. The most important is invisible." As his slightly parted lips formed a half-smile, I told myself again, what moves me so deeply about this little sleeping prince is his loyalty to a flower. It is the image of a rose that shines in him like the flame of a lamp. even when he sleeps, and I imagined him even more fragile. One must protect lamps while a gust of wind can extinguish them. And walking like this, I discovered the well at dawn. Chapter 25. Men, said the little prince, they dive into the fast trains. But they no longer know what they are looking for. Then they get agitated and go round in circles. And he added, "It's not worth it." The well we had reached did not look like other Saharan wells. Saharan wells are simply holes dug in the sand. This one looked like a village well. But there was no village there, and I thought I was dreaming. "It's strange," I said to the little prince. "Everything is ready, the pulley, the bucket, and the rope." He laughed, touched the rope, and made the pulley work. And the pulley groaned like an old weather vane. When the wind has slept for a long time, "You hear," said the little prince, "we are waking this well, and it sings." I didn't want him to make an effort. "Let me do it," I said to him. "It's too heavy for you." Slowly, I hoisted the bucket to the rim. I set it up right there. In my ears, the song of the pulley lasted, and in the water that still trembled, I saw the sun trembling. "I am thirsty for that water," said the little prince. "Give me to drink." And I understood what he had been looking for. I lifted the bucket to his lips. He drank, his eyes closed. It was sweet like a celebration. This water was something more than just nourishment. It was born from walking under the stars, from the song of the pulley, from the effort of my arms. It was good for the heart, like a gift. When I was a little boy, the light of the Christmas tree, the music of the midnight mass, the sweetness of smiles created. Thus, all the radiance of the Christmas gift that I received. "The men from your planet," said the little prince, "cultivate 5,000 roses in the same garden. And they don't find what they are looking for." "They don't find it," I replied. "And yet what they seek could be found in a single rose or a little water." "Of course," I replied. And the little prince added, "But the eyes are blind. One must look with the heart." I had drunk. I was breathing well. The sand at dawn is the color of honey. I was also happy with that honey color. Why did I have to feel pain? "You must keep your promise," said the little prince softly, who had once again sat beside me. "What promise?" "You know a muzzle for my sheep. I'm responsible for that flower." I took my sketches out of my pocket. The little prince saw them and laughed. "Your baobabs, they look a bit like cabbages." "Oh, I who was so proud of the baobabs. Your foxet's ears, they look a bit like horns, and they're too long." And he laughed again. "You're unfair, little man. I couldn't draw anything but closed bows and open bows." "Oh, that'll do," he said. "Children know." I therefore drew a muzzle, and I felt my heart tighten as I gave it to him. "You have plans that I don't know." But he didn't answer me. He said, "You know, my fall to earth tomorrow will be the anniversary." Then, after a silence, he said again, "I fell right near here," and he blushed. And again, without understanding why, I felt a strange sorrow. However, a question came to me. "So it's not by chance that, on the morning I met you 8 days ago, you were walking like that, all alone, 1,000 miles from all inhabited regions? You were returning to the point of your fall?" The little prince blushed again, and I added, hesitating, "Because perhaps of the anniversary?" The little prince blushed again. He never answered questions, but when one blushes, that means yes, doesn't it? "Ah," I said to him, "I'm afraid." But he answered me, "You must now work. You must go back to your machine. I'm waiting for you here. Come back tomorrow evening." But I was not reassured. I remembered the fox. One risks crying a little if one has allowed oneself to be tamed. Chapter 26. There was, next to the well, a ruin of an old stone wall. When I returned from my work the next evening, I saw from afar my little prince sitting there, legs dangling. And I heard him speaking. "Don't you remember?" he said. "It's not quite here." Another voice must have replied to him, for he retorted, "Yes, yes, it's the day, but it's not the place. I continued to walk toward the wall. I still didn't see or hear anyone. Yet the little prince replied again, "Of course. You will see where my trace begins in the sand. You just have to wait for me there. I'll be there tonight." I was 20 meters from the wall and still didn't see anything. The little prince said again, after a silence, "Do you have the good poison? You're sure not to make me suffer for long?" I stopped, my heart tight, but I still didn't understand. "Now go away," he said. "I want to go down." Then I lowered my eyes to the foot of the wall. And I jumped. There he was, standing up to the little prince. One of those yellow snakes that can execute you in 30 seconds. While rummaging in my pocket to pull out my revolver, I took off running, but at the noise I made, the snake let itself gently slide into the sand like a jet of water that dies, and without hurrying, slipped between the stones with a light metallic sound. I reached the wall just in time to catch my little prince, pale as snow. "What's this story?" I said to him. "You're now talking to snakes." I had untied his eternal golden scarf. I had moistened his temples and made him drink. And now I didn't dare ask him anything. He looked at me seriously and wrapped his arms around my neck. I felt his heart beat like that of a dying bird. "When you've shot it with a rifle," he told me, "I'm glad you found what was missing in your machine. You can go home now." "How do you know?" I was just about to announce to him that, against all hope, I had succeeded in my work. He didn't reply to my question, but he added, "I'm also going back home today." Then, melancholy, "It's much further away, it's much harder." I felt that something extraordinary was happening. I squeezed him in my arms like a little child. And yet it seemed to me that he was sinking vertically into an abyss, and I could do nothing to hold him back. He had a serious look, lost very far away. "I have your sheep, and I have the box for the sheep, and I have the muzzle." And he smiled sadly. I waited a long time. I felt that he was warming up little by little. "Little man, you were scared." He had been scared, of course, but he laughed softly. "I'll be much more afraid tonight." Again I felt frozen by the feeling of irreparability. And I understood that I couldn't bear the idea of never hearing that laugh again. For me, it was like a fountain in the desert. "Little man, I want to hear you laugh again." But he told me, "This night, it will be a year. My star will be just above the place where I fell last year. Little man, isn't it a bad dream?" This story about the snake and the appointment and the star. But he didn't answer my question. He told me, "What's important is invisible." Of course, it's like with the flower. If you love a flower that is found in a star, it's sweet at night to look at the sky. All the stars are blooming. Of course, it's like with the water. The water you gave me to drink was like music because of the pulley and the rope. Do you remember? It was good. Of course, you will look at the stars at night. It's too small at my place for me to show you where mine is. It's better like this. My star will be one of the stars for you. So all the stars, you will love to look at them. They will all be your friends. And then I will make you a gift." He laughs again. "Ah, little man, I love to hear that laugh. Just that will be my gift. It will be like with the water." "What do you mean?" "People have stars that are not the same. For some who travel, the stars are guides. For others, they are just little lights. For others who are scholars, they are problems. For my businessmen, they were gold. But all those stars are silent. You will have stars like no one else." "What do you mean?" "When you look at the sky at night, since I will live in one of them, since I will laugh in one of them, then it will be for you as if all the stars were laughing. You will have stars that know how to laugh." And he laughs again. "And when you are consoled, one always finds consolation. You will be happy to have known me. You will always be my friend. You will want to laugh with me. And you will sometimes open your window, just for pleasure. and your friends will be quite astonished to see you laughing while looking at the sky. Then you will tell them, yes, the stars always make me laugh, and they will think you are crazy. I will have played a nasty trick on you. And he laughs again. It will be as if I had given you, instead of stars, lots of little bells that know how to laugh. And he laughs again. Then he became serious. This night, you know, don't come. I will not leave you. I will look as if I am in pain. I will look a bit as if I am dying. That's how it is. Don't come to see this. It's not worth it. I will not leave you. But he was worried. I'm telling you this. It's also because of the snake. It must not bite you. Snakes are wicked. They can bite for fun. I will not leave you. But something reassured him. It's true they don't have the venom for the second bite. That night I did not see him set off. He had escaped without a sound. When I managed to catch up with him, he was walking determinedly, with quick steps. He only said to me, "Ah, you are here." And he took my hand. But he was still troubled. "You were wrong. You will have pain. I will look as if I am dead, and it won't be true." I remained silent. "You understand. It's too far. I cannot take this body with me. It's too heavy." I remained silent. "But it will be like an old abandoned shell. Old shells are not sad." I remained silent. He became a little discouraged. But he made another effort. "It will be nice, you know. I too will look at the stars. All the stars will be wells with a rusty pulley. All the stars will pour me a drink." I remained silent. "It will be so much fun. You will have 500 million bells. I will have 500 million fountains." And he fell silent too because he was crying. "This is it. Let me take a step by myself." And he sat down because he was afraid. He said again, "You know, my flower. I am responsible for her. And she is so weak, and she is so naive. She has 4 tiny thorns to protect her from the world." I sat down because I could no longer stand. He said, "There, that's all." He hesitated a little longer, then he stood up. He took a step. I could not move. There was nothing but a yellow flash near his ankle. He remained still for a moment. He did not scream. He fell gently like a tree falls. It didn't even make a sound because of the sand. Chapter 27. And now, of course, it's been 6 years already. I have never told this story yet. The friends who saw me again were very happy to see me alive. I was sad, but I told them it's just fatigue. Now I have consoled myself a little. That is to say, not completely, but I know well that he has returned to his planet, for at dawn I did not find his body. It wasn't such a heavy body. And I love listening to the stars at night. It's like 500 million bells. But now something extraordinary is happening. The muzzle I drew for the little prince. I forgot to add the leather strap. He will never be able to attach it to the sheep. So I wonder what happened on his planet. Perhaps the sheep ate the flower. Sometimes I tell myself, surely not. The little prince locks his flower every night under his glass globe. And he watches over his sheep closely. Then I am happy. And all the stars laugh softly. Sometimes I tell myself, one gets distracted once in a while. And that's enough. He forgot one evening the glass globe, or the sheep, went out quietly during the night. Then the bells all turn into tears. That's a great mystery. For you who also love the little prince, as for me. Nothing in the universe is the same if somewhere, we don't know where, a sheep that we do not know, has, yes or no, eaten a rose. Look at the sky. Ask yourself, did the sheep eat the flower or not? And you will see how everything changes, and no grown-up will ever understand that it is of such importance. This is, for me, the most beautiful and the saddest landscape in the world. It's the same landscape as the one on the previous page, but I drew it once again to show it to you well. It's here that the little prince appeared on earth, then disappeared. Look carefully at this landscape so that you can be sure to recognize it. If you travel one day in Africa in the desert, and if you happen to pass by there, I beg you, do not hurry. Wait a little just under the star. If then a child comes to you, if he laughs, if he has golden hair, if he does not answer when questioned, you will surely guess who he is. So be kind. Don't leave me so sad. Write to me quickly that he has returned. The end. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe to my channel.